So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our third Juneteenth event for 2025. Tonight, I think is more kind of almost in a way the highlight of the week. We have Ms. Sasha Mitchell here, and Sasha is going to talk to us about tips about searching for your family history, trying to find out about who you are. And this, to me, the reason I say it's a highlight because this is another part of Juneteenth. As talking about when you read the history or you understand Juneteenth, one thing that happens, yes, it freed the enslaved people at that time, but right after that declaration, the reading of General Order number 3, a lot of enslaved people, they were told in that general order to stay where they were, do not leave. But there was what was known as the scatter that happened. They were told to stay where they were, but most of them left. Most of them ran, I'm getting out of here. And in that process over the years of that scatter, them leaving, there was a phenomenon also that went on, was that a lot of them were leaving, not just from Texas, but all across the South, where they were going in search of their loved ones. And also that happened during that time where in newspapers across the South and some in the North, but mostly across the South, they were, have you seen ads? Have you seen this person? Last seen ads. And they advertised, I had a brother, I had a sister, I had someone of my loved ones. They were sold to this person down in Louisiana. Their name is John. We think he was sold to Mr. Tom Smith. Has anyone seen them? And throughout the South, you had this search of trying to connect with lost family members, those that have been sold away or taken away. And so I think that's an important thing to highlight because that's what we're even still doing here in 2025, this search for family. As my family's been blessed to be able to try to find some roots. I spoke at Land of Sky on Tuesday, and I was talking about my great-great-grandfather, Mitchell McCoy, who was born in 1836 down in Bladen County, North Carolina, right outside Elizabethtown. And we talked about the McCoys. He married Irene McCoy, another McCoy, but not related. But we know the history of our family. There were two McCoy brothers from Ireland that had plantations down there in Elizabethtown and Bladen County, right there by Wilmington. So it's believed that my great-great-grandmother was owned by one brother and my great-great-grandfather was owned by another, and that's how they got together. But finding out your roots, finding out that connection is something that drives us still. We always want to know who are our people. That's why we ask one another, where are you from? Who are you related to? And then we talk, if somebody says, well, hey, I'm from Durham. Well, do you know so? Well, wait a minute, or in that, because we're trying to find, is there a connection? Now, also, my mama used to say, you also want to find out, you come from a place, make sure you aren't related to somebody. Because my mom's mom came from Abbeville, South Carolina. And my dad's mother is also from Abbeville. And so there was a talk, and they said, well, they might have been cousins and stuff like that. But, again, where are they from? Well, Abbeville, Elizabethtown. My mom's daddy's people come out of South Boston, Virginia. So you find those places where it is. And so we thought it was very important to get one of our local experts to come in and maybe give us a little tips of the trade and some insights of how to go about trying to connect and find those roots. So without further ado from me, Ms. Sasha Mitchell.
Thank you. Hi. I'm glad you're all here. I'm sharing tips for new and seasoned researchers. I'll just say, it's in the about me here. I am originally from New Jersey. My mom's roots and I am biracial. My mom's family is white. My dad's family is black and mixed race. My mom's family goes back to New Jersey to the late 1600s when her ancestor, the only ancestor on my mother's family that I found that enslaved people, came from Barbados to New Jersey and bought the land from the Indians with wampum and silver, and it's in all the history books. That's like deep roots in New Jersey. But I also found out that my great-great-grandfather had a business on Eagle Street, my dad's on my father's side, and that was a surprise to me after I moved here, so that was kind of interesting. I'm the mother of 3 grown sons. For work, and I have my full-time job. I'm an operations director at Dogwood Alliance, and our mission is to advance environmental justice and climate action by mobilizing diverse voices to protect southern forests and communities from industrial logging. So that's what I do during the day. And I'm a digital archivist, family historian, and a seamstress and a scrapbooker and a hand embroiderer. I love to do hand sewing and make stuff. And I have a dollhouse and whatever. So I love to make stuff, and I'm just crafty. And I started this when I was 14 years old, this family history research. I didn't know I was in it for the long game. The things that I could achieve back then, my dead ends, my brick walls, you know, when you've been doing this for almost 50 years, or I don't know what it is, you know, things advance, and then you have a new brick wall. So I didn't know I was in it for the long game, but we can all keep working. The bad news is that we have all probably missed opportunities. We never asked questions of our elders. We didn't label photographs. We didn't ask them who's that, and we didn't record oral history. So it's so sad when we think of those missed opportunities because you don't get them back. But the good news is we have a lot of new technology, amazing new technology. I feel really guilty because I am a professional organizer, right? I used to do that, was my thing, you know, self-employed. I didn't even really make a lot of money, but whatever. It was a lot of work. I would go to people's houses and organize their garage or whatever. And one of the things was I would organize their photos. People had a bazillion photos. They didn't know what to do with it, and I would help them. And we would get rid of the photos that were completely blurry. You couldn't see anything. And now you have technology where you can plop this blurry photo, and they can fix it and see somebody. And I'm like, oh, you know, I wonder if we got rid of something that was good. Who knew that there was going to be technology like that? It's crazy. We have Facebook. It's not the same as when, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's been around that long, but it used to be everyone was on there by their real name in a certain demographic of people. So if you were searching for somebody, you might probably find their profile and they had filled out the about me and had some friends and put a lot of pictures and did things. But things are different now, so you don't get people, a lot of people are just not as public with their stuff, so it's a little harder to find things on there, but it's still worth it to look. We have Google, the Google Maps, the Google Books, all the tools available to us are amazing. The online resources and the DNA, a fabulous resource. We had no idea. Things that I never knew I would, you know, you think, well, we'll never know. Well, you know, you can know. This is my family tree. I know you can't read it, but that's an example for you to see how far back on so many lines. And let's see, I don't think any of these, like one of them says unnamed, so that's like not fair, but I may have put it there because I had to record some information about that person. So, but all the other ones have names, I think, and it's astounding, and a lot of that is due to DNA. It's much more full now since I've made that image. So when you are beginning, you start with your immediate family. You don't just jump in and try to go for the gusto and, you know, how far back can I go? Start with yourself. Start with your parents. Get the facts. Ask them. Say, this is important to me. I'd like to record this for posterity. And begin there. And then if you have access to your grandparents, you know, talk to them and then ask for their facts. There are tools like a pedigree chart. That's the one that shows your parents and then their parents and their parents that branches out like a tree. You can look for funeral programs, family Bibles, and things like that. Now, in my family, grandma, she's 105 now. She's going to be 106 in October. Under her bed, she just had a big old box, and like every funeral program, wedding announcements, and a bunch of random stuff too. But all these things were there. Like you knew you could find them there. But I had her Aunt Leon had a family Bible, a big thick one, old, not that old though, but everybody's wedding announcements and funeral programs were tucked in the front. So I went to her, when I was at her house, I was writing down everything that I saw in there because that's really good information for you. The funeral programs often tell you all the siblings' married names, things that you might not know about where they had lived during different periods. So, start at home and gather information about the things that are around you and, obviously be respectful. I have a resource page that I can share with you that's going to have these things that I'm mentioning. So the pedigree chart, the family group sheets. A family group sheet is a sheet that has a mom and a dad and then their children listed below. And the facts about them, when were they born, when did they die, if they were married, when their marriage date was, and maybe even like where were they buried. But it's like a compact thing. It's supposed to be for one family, and if you have extra kids, you can add an extra page. And when you're talking to your family, don't corner them and be asking them a bazillion questions like it's an interrogation. The best thing to do is to let them know how important this is to you. I'm sure all of you are in this room because you care about family history. And if you communicate that passion that you have to the people that you're asking for help, it's easier for them to want to help you. And if they're a little more stubborn, then do all you can without their help and then give it to them and say, look what I made. Here's our family tree. This is what I know. Do you have anything that I can add? And if you really think that they could be pitching in, but they're not, spell their name wrong or get something wrong about one of their grandkids on that family tree, and they will be looking and they will call you back. And then you can say, it takes all hands. I want to know the right information. And none of us loses by having this information and sharing it. And I can tell you so many people have said, well, my Aunt Susan had all that stuff, but then there was a fire at her house and then that was gone. Or so-and-so died and the kids didn't take care of it and the house got emptied out and everything was gone. And it happens. So when you talk to folks, just say, we know whose history is told right now, and we know whose is not. But we have an opportunity to preserve our history online. And once that thing goes digital with a name on it, it's out there forever. You can claim it, and it can't get lost. It'll never burn up in a fire. I'm sure there's the aspect of the digital world that is ephemeral, and I'm going to talk to you about that. It's not something that you should rely on for all of your memories, but it is a good thing that we are sharing our information online so that it's protected and dispersed. Okay, and record your sources. So when you start doing this, you're going to be talking to people, and the source is going to be conversation with Aunt Lucille, on the date, me and her. That's fine. But have that. Because later, when you have some information that may conflict, then you'll say, how do I weigh the truthfulness of this information? What's the source? is, this is her memory or this is this document. And sometimes you want to trust her memory, or, it just depends. So, but you always want to know, where did I get that? Because you might forget later. And then use online resources. And there I'm going to talk about some of my favorites that I'm on all the time. So FamilySearch.org, Ancestry.com, Find a Grave, Cindy's List, Afrogenius, and as a reminder, you're looking for records, not trees. You might find a tree that looks like yours, and it may well be, but you've got to really tread lightly when you just adopt that information without knowing that it's really true. If you're relying on someone else's research, you can be steered the wrong way, and then you would not, it takes a lot to figure that out and undo it if it really matters to you. And if you're going to do this, you should do it right. So that, on Find a Grave, you're going to find sometimes that people have made a biography and linked a lot of other family information now. But you can't always assume that that's correct. So that's just a caution with that. But wait, so I'm going to just check, I think. Yeah, I go into detail about Family Search on the next page, but Ancestry.com is my favorite site because I've got 300, not joking, family trees on there. I manage the DNA profiles of probably 200 people. Not actively, but they, I help a lot of folks, and so all my activity is stored in Ancestry.com. You can get free accounts at Ancestry. It's called a free guest account. I'll have a link to that on my resource sheet. It's limited, you'll be limited to the free records they offer, which are, I can't remember the list, but when you click on the link I'm going to share with you, it shows you this is what you can do, and this is what you can access, and here's what you can't do. So there's that aspect, and I'll talk about the DNA parts of it later. So Find a Grave, I just mentioned, that is great for, if you know your folks are buried in a cemetery, and it's a country cemetery, just take a look at the list of all the people buried in the cemetery. Check if they list the plots. Look at who else is in the plot that's your person is in. Because sometimes you'll find that there's family right there. So that's something, just to be aware of. And if you know that your family attended a church, go to Find a Grave and look to see if there was a cemetery there for the church. Cindy's List is a reference material with every kind of topic about family history. You name it. Gifts, different countries, African American, then that breaks down. It's just insane, everything. But it's alphabetized, and it's very nice, and they're always working on updating the links, and it's a great reference source for finding information. Afrogenius.com it's been around a long time, and that's got a lot of African American history on it. And then when you're doing your work, listing out, who your folks are, make a timeline and search for the records that are going to fill in the gaps. So if I'm leaning back from the mic so you can't hear me. So if you're researching and you know that here my person was alive from here to here, I'll pick my grandpa. He was born in 1911. He died in 1980. he should have a birth certificate in Pittsburgh. He might have been in the paper anytime during his lifespan up to age 30. He got married to another lady before he married my grandma. Never got a divorce. Interesting. Then he married my grandma. It's horrible. And he had 2 kids with her, so there's 2 birth records. He played baseball on one of the Negro teams in Pittsburgh, is what they called it at the time. I've never found which team it was, but there might be a record of that. He might have registered for the 1942 draft. So you think about what are the records. He should be in the 1920, 30, and 40, and 50 census. So those are you're going to know what you're looking for, and try and find those things. Visit archives when you can, and that's when you're going to make a trip to you're making a trip. So you're going to go to Raleigh to the state archives, or I went to UNC Chapel Hill. I had always wanted to go because the people who enslaved my ancestors had donated their papers to that his Southern Historic Collection, and many families did. So did the Lenores, and they also enslaved my ancestors. So I was able to go in there and have people bring me these boxes that had the plantation diary in it. And I just, turned the pages and took photos of every page. And then when I got home, I read them. I was like busy. I'm not here to waste my time reading it right now. I am getting as much information as I can from this place because I know I only get so long to be here, and I want to get what I can get quickly. So when you go to places like that, prepare in advance. Go to their website, find out what resources they have, see if you need to register, find out what you have to do to get in. You can pre-request the materials that you're going to want to borrow so that they can have them waiting for you. That's nice. And that's all. And you can't bring anything in there. I think they let you bring a pencil. But you can have your phone, so that's great. Use email lists. There are resources like on Ancestry, and if you go to Cindy's list, you'll find them. There's lots of different ones that target various counties where people live or surnames that people are studying, that you might find cousins who are querying about your family, and you'll learn information there. And then use local resources, and by that I mean local to the place where your folks lived. But also, we have a Mormon Church of Latter-day Saints Family History Center in Arden on Sweeten Creek Road. So you can go there and use their library. And there's some records that sometimes if you go on to find on Family Search and it says, you can't see this image, you have to be at a Family Search Center, at a Family History Center. That's what they're talking about. So you could go there and see it. But the Vital Records offices, you can find out where it is, either the county or the state where your folks were. There are maybe marriage certificates waiting for you, birth certificates, all kinds of stuff like that. Local history societies can have gold mines of stuff. We have Old Buncombe County Genealogical Society. They have lots of stuff, amazing, I can't believe. And when people donate to them, they're like, sure, we'll take it. I'm like, how can you just take everything? They have so much stuff, but resource books on different states and, all these cemetery lists from the Boy Scouts prepared during the Works Progress Administration, and all kinds of amazing resources in there. So Those are places that you may not know about that you can get more information about your family. So FamilySearch.org. This is a free website. It is run by the Mormons. They're not going to hassle you and be like, hey, you want to be a Mormon? Not that there's anything wrong with that. You can search their records just by typing your ancestor's name and so I can click search. But you can also say, I want to search your catalog. And in the catalog, you go search, and then there's like, you can pick down and you search catalog. And then you can type the county or the city or the state, and it'll bring up a list of what's available. Oh, and you check the little box that says online. You don't have to. They used to have a service where if it wasn't online, you could like request some pages of it or something, but I don't know if they do that anymore. But I just click the one for online. So you click online and it brings up a list. And there will be all these things, and this is the ones you care about. Vital records, probate records, land records, any property records. So there might be others. There could be church records, cemetery records. So they'll list those all there. And to the right, you'll see a little camera that indicates, yes, we've got digital images of those. So those are records that have not been indexed. And that means that they've scanned them, they took the photo, but nobody got to say who's all read it. Nobody read it for the computer. But the book is whole, if you're lucky. It's just as if you had gone to the county courthouse and you have to turn the pages of this old book. And I've seen some where like the A, B, and C are missing from the index because it's really old, but it starts on D. But so you have to, look for your people in the index. It'll tell you what page, and then you keep going and go to the page. And you can find wills. That's where I have found the most wills for people who enslaved my ancestors and other people that I've been researching. Those slave owner wills, that's where I find them. But they have a new thing that I didn't know about. Somebody just told me about it, and I was like, what? I never heard of that. What are you talking about? So you go to familysearch.org/ and this will be on the resource thing, separate. I listed it. Same with the catalog search. /search/full-text. And then another slash. And then you click return, and this thing comes up. It says, this is a beta. It's not official, whatever. And then you can type any name in there, and you can say a state, and you can do a date range. And that is, I believe, AI reading the documents that they've scanned. And there's so much stuff that's like, I had no idea. Like all these court cases that my ancestor participated in as a deponent, and that's great. He's telling me where he lived in 1865, when he got a piece of land, exactly where it was, and who he got it from, and who the neighbors were. It's amazing. There was just lots of things popped out. Oh, record of my ancestor who I've not found many records of him, but so this is like the third record I found with his name on it, that he paid taxes that year or something. But it opened up a whole new way for us to find our people, everybody, because they're mentioned in a document, and this computer has been taught how to read that script. If we can learn it, it can learn it. So that is amazing for what you can find through that. And then the references, the Family Search also has like an explanatory page for every county that you're researching. They like tell you when it's formed and, the history and, various information. So it's just got a wealth of information there. They do make you set up an account, but it's free. Okay, and then the other technology. So about DNA, I love that I can have a DNA test. For me, particularly as a descendant of people who were denied the right to claim their families, to get an education, that I can use science and my, spit to learn and reclaim the names of my ancestors is great. Yes, you should be concerned about who you give your DNA to. Yes, you should read those terms. I think I stand to gain a lot more than I stand to lose. It is illegal for anyone to discriminate against you based on your genetic material for health insurance. But it is not illegal for them to discriminate against you for DNA material for life insurance. And they have found sneaky ass ways, excuse my mouth, to obtain that information. I'll just give you an example. There was like a support group for people who had this disease. And these people got in there and somehow got into, the folks were sharing their information and they got a hold of that. So it could happen. And then there's the breaches. So here's what I'll say about DNA. If your brother murdered somebody, don't do it. No, I'm just agreeing. We're almost at a point where it really doesn't matter if any one of us as an individual decides, because so many cousins have tested that it's almost a moot point. That's sorry to say. However, it's, to me, something that illuminates my history. It gives me information that I would never have gotten otherwise. And I protect myself in all the ways that I can otherwise, by, trying to deal with reputable companies and whatever. So that's, but I do it and I recommend it. And Ancestry is the #1 site for doing it. They sell kits for $39 when they're on sale on the regular. Most of the people, they test more people than anybody else. That's the #1 factor for being helpful for you, for finding your people, except if you are European, because MyHeritage has a lot more European people who take tests there. Most of the people who take those tests are interested in family history and may have a family tree. So that's like why that's the best place. Family Tree DNA is also great because they have special tools, particularly the Y DNA test. It's called the Big Y. I'll talk to you about DNA a little bit later in the presentation. And GEDmatch is a site that's you can upload your DNA to yourself. You would have to download it from the company you got it from. There's a place to do that with all of them. And then that's you're saying, okay, I'm going to read the terms of GEDmatch and decide. But that's the site that they use to catch the Golden State Killer. You can check a box that says, will I let my DNA be used for law enforcement purposes? And you can check the box that says no. So there's that. There's lots of tools on there, crazy tools. Like they have a Lazarus tool that's like, it'll try to give you the DNA estimate of somebody who's, like my dad is deceased. I couldn't get his DNA, but I have my sister, my full sister, my half sister, my aunt, his full sister, my grandmother, his mother, my grandpa's brother. So that I have a great deal of other people that have the DNA that he would have. And because of that, they can make this thing like a DNA profile for him. That's nuts. And you can see what's called the SNPs or SNP, which is, so I'm a quick DNA, well, I'll talk to the DNA later. Okay. So we have Facebook, LinkedIn, that's for finding out like where did they go to high school and stuff, or where did they go to college, if you're looking for folks. Google people's names. Switchboard, you look up folks. I think that's still around. With Google, you can find obituaries, websites about families, cemetery listings, and slave records. Google the names of your ancestors. Google the name of the enslaver and the county where they live. Just Google it, and the word family history. You might find that some white person has researched their ancestry so that it will help you find records, a will that might name your family if you're looking for it. My addressing like what you can find in white people's will, that's not to be exclusionary of white people who are here attending. It's just the way that African American people have to find their people. It's just that's the way you have to do it, because that's where it lives. But we all talk about the brick, going to 1870, and then it's like a kind of a brick wall for a lot of people, because unless your ancestor was a free person of color, then they will not be named in the census records. But they may well be named in court documents. And it's only 2 more censuses, 1860 and 1850, where white people's names are listed. And then you don't get their full names, but you got the court records and the church records and other records. There's things out there. So don't think that you should give up at 1870 or think that there's nothing to find. I forgot to say something about the site Ancestry when I was there. And this is just a regular tip. When you find your ancestor in 1870, if you find them in the census, look down the street, see who's next door. I had a person I was just helping, and he had the names of his great-grandfather's parents, and he didn't know that they lived right next door. I guess he had just not looked. But not only that, then his dad was down the street, one more house, and then his dad with a grandpa in the house. It was like there were 5 generations on that page, and it was like nuts. So I said, you gotta look at that. You gotta check the neighbors. So if you are researching and you have come to a point, if you're researching as a white person and you find that you have ancestors who have enslaved people, you might be just like, whoa, I didn't know about this. Maybe you did know about it. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to process it, the way you can't take ownership for your ancestors' actions, no more than they can take pride in your actions, because they didn't affect each other. But, well, if you want to try and use your resources to kind of help illuminate the history for people who were enslaved by your family, you can take that on. And it's really vital and helpful if you do. And it can be it can open your heart to relationships with people that you might have never thought that you would be like in a relationship with. And it can teach you a great deal about just history, because you all are here because you enjoy history to some extent. And that is a part of history that especially DNA is shining a light on, that is shining some, people have these great grandpas and they had 6 kids, but then they see that there are a lot more kids. and when you have a DNA cousin, that's real. That's not fake. That's DNA. It means you're related. People get a little like, that must be a mistake, and that's not to say that there haven't been like actual mistakes. That does happen once in a while, but most of the time, it's like all real. So somebody's your DNA cousin, there is a relationship, and it's up to you to figure out what it is. And publishing or sharing there are tools, so many tools if you want to publish. There are like family history programs have a thing that'll just build you a website if you want, like publish a report to a URL or to a that kind of file. So those are other tools that you have. And Ancestry also has a publish feature where you can publish a book. You pick the ancestor, and then you say you want an ancestor book or a descendant book, or a combination of these two couples, or these two people in a couple. And like it'll fan it out, and it'll add all the records for those people into the book if you want. You can add extra pages, like military pages. I did one for my aunt. We had a page of recipes. We had a page all about the church because they're like super Catholic and they like met the Pope or something. And they had a picture of all the brothers-in-law because they always go fishing. So you could do very personalized books that you make the book, and then you can send a link to your family and be like, hey, I made this great book. If you want a copy, here's the link. And they could buy it themselves. So yay, right? So that's a great way to share the family history. But also you can just make reports and email them to your family. I recommend sharing them at family occasions just because you can. So I was going to do a quick talk about DNA. So the thing said 5:30 to 8. And I was like, do they want me to talk for 5:30 to 8? Because I can, but I don't know. I didn't know how long I was supposed to go. So I'm just going. So I'm going to give you a quick primer on DNA. So everybody inherits the mother line, the mother's 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 mother. That's called mtDNA. So that goes straight back into time. It is DNA that changes very slowly. When people talk about what those codes are, the letter code, what they're referring to is the name they have given to the set of mutations that they observe on this DNA over time. And it's often tied to a place. So the first DNA that they find, the earliest one, they will call it Eve, is A, and it's in Africa. And over time, very slowly, there's a mutation. Something changes, and then everyone who comes after that, all the children from the mothers, all those mother lines pass down that mutation. And then another one happens. And the people are moving sometimes, and time is passing, and that's what you see when you see those letters. You're just seeing the time and the things passing. Only men inherit the father line. That's the Y DNA, and that's this thing that is up here. That changes much quicker. For that reason, it's much more valuable in terms of identifying actual relatives. The Y DNA, the MT DNA, the maternal, it could be like, I forget, like 30, it's gonna be 30,000 years, like crazy amounts of years that you're in the same group with somebody. Unless your cousin, like from the same great-grandma or great-great-grandma or something like pretty close tested, you could match someone on the mtDNA, and it could be anywhere. So it's not so helpful. But the Y DNA, it's first you're going to get a lot more clarity because of the specificity of the time, like where they are in time. It's not like the chunks aren't so big. Does that make sense? Anybody? As the DNA changes. Okay, so I was trying to illustrate with my hand, like the way the mother line DNA, like say my hands are the shape of Africa, right? Right? And the DNA starts like here, it's A. And over time, the mutation happens here, and then this one will be B. And then the next mutation happens, and it's going up to Europe. This one turns into C. And pardon? The mutations happen with each generation. Not each generation. No, that's what I'm saying. For the maternal line, the mutations happen over tens of thousands of years. It takes that long. For the paternal line, I know a dude who was able to observe a mutation between him and his own kid because they both tested and the kid had a different thing. And that's like, wow. And you know why that happens? Because, we don't know, but things that screw with your DNA are why that happens. Radiation could be. It could be anything, but it's just interesting. That is something to know about and, think about. It is something that I've thought about a lot, is that my ancestors were enslaved at the lead mines in Wythe County, Virginia, for generations. Lead is a horrible toxin. It changes your DNA. The relatives down there had awful neurological problems. That's my people, some of them. And that's in my DNA. And you inherit some things that come, and there are things we don't even know about DNA. One thing that folks are learning is that trauma can be passed in DNA. So what they found is that they were able to study people who had lived through trauma and examine their DNA and see that things had been passed along to grandchildren who had not experienced the thing, who had the same result that the people who had experienced. You could look it up. It's a real study. I'm not explaining it great, but anyway, there's a lot we don't know. We'll probably continue making really great discoveries about how to use it for finding family. But for now, we have great tools. When you take a test, you're going to get something that's showing your composition. It'll show you a breakdown of what it thinks. This is my Aunt Gwen's test. So this is could have been my dad. The same, she is his whole sister. 63% sub-Saharan African, 34.8% European. I have found out who a lot of those Europeans were. The Ashkenazi Jewish, 3.8, came from Moses Einstein, who was a cousin of Albert Einstein, a distant cousin, but yes. And so, whatever. So that's one of the things you'll get. I won't go too much into like the DNA stuff because I know if you haven't done it, it's like not meaningful to you. But what I will say is if you take a DNA test, use the LEADS method, Google it. I didn't add that to my resource sheet, but maybe I can do it. I can add it before I send it out because it's right on my laptop. The LEADS method was invented by a lady called Dana Leeds, who used to help adoptees find their birth parents. And what you do is you start with not your close cousins. In fact, when you scan down your list of matches, you skip anyone who says first cousin or first cousin once removed, and start with people who have between 400 and 90 centimorgans matching you. And you copy that list of folks into a spreadsheet. You just take the little mouse, copy it, paste it in the spreadsheet, copy it, paste it in the spreadsheet, all the way down, and in the next column, how many centimorgans, okay? And then you go to your little spreadsheet, and then you go back to the list of DNA matches and click on the first person, and click on shared matches. And you color all those matches in the same color, whoever matches that. And then you go back, and then you click on the next person who doesn't have a color, who is not a first cousin, right? You click on that person, and then you click on shared matches, and you do it again. Some people might be colored twice, and we'll have to figure out why. But just color them in, you color them a different color. If you recognize those folks, like, oh, those are my cousins from my aunt, from Grandma and Grandpa Jones, and then you would name that group the Jones-Johnson group because her maiden name, Grandma's maiden name is Johnson, or great-grandma, right? So what you wind up with when you do this process, if you're lucky and you don't live in a community where your ancestors are really closely related, is 4 groups that represent the 4 grandparents. And if you can identify some of them, then you can rule out, you could figure out who the other ones are. And then you look at that group of matches and see what do they have in common. If you don't know anything about your people that you're looking for, what do these people have in common? So you go to each one, and what I do is in the notes, write like what names are in their family tree. If they have one, always click on their profile and see, unless it says no trees, then you don't have to click it. But if they have one, click on it. If it's private, or if it just has one person in it, make a note that says private so you don't waste your time clicking on it again. But if you click on it and then you see a tree, that could be their tree, they just didn't link it. And if you don't see a tree there, click on their profile when you're there looking at the match, and it'll bring you to their profile page. They might have trees there. So that's like an extra place to look. And what you want to do essentially is build family trees or access family trees for every one of your matches so that you can, on the lines you're focused on, to see what is the common link between them, and then you focus on those folks. that you let the DNA guide you and you don't just make assumptions about any of it. So, and I found it helpful to color in, to make the profile picture for the person, for the DNA match, because you add them to your family tree, add the DNA match to your family tree. If you don't know how they're related, you just add them as a floating person. So here's how you do that. You might not know. So you just pick any relative that you have, right? And click add a brother or a sister. If you're adding a guy or whatever, add the relative, add the brother. Put their information in, and then unlink them from the parents. Then they're freely floating out there. And then add the information about the other person into your family tree. Hopefully, you know which line of theirs is the one that's important to you. You're like, okay, I need to look at the one that's in Chester County because that's where my folks were, or whatever. And add them to your family tree, and then use an identifying photo to color in their profile picture. Because then when you look at the family view of Ancestry's pictures, and just so you know, when you're looking at the family tree on Ancestry, there's a pedigree view that goes to the right. You'll be on the left, and all the ancestors go that way. And then there's family view that puts the ancestors up top and all the aunts and cousins spread out that going down. So then when you have colored in your DNA matches and their parents, choosing the parent that is the one that leads to what you're looking for, you're going to see little trails that lead up to people. Or you're going to see, oh, look, I got matches from 3 siblings, that they're this guy. But all of these matches are much closer than those, you're going to start to see some stuff there. So that's how you do it. And so that's my DNA part. So when you're done, what do you do with it, right? Share it with your family. Print the report on paper and put it with your family Bible. If you are a spiritual person, you have a Bible, put it there. If you are not, put it with the special documents of your family. If you really care about it being around for posterity, and you've made extra efforts to not include the information of any living relatives, then share it with a local history society. There are ways to just click a box on your on most family tree programs that will obscure or eliminate printing certain generations so that you don't risk exposing the private information of some of your folks. Put your thing on Ancestry.com because that is the best way to find cousins. It's really great. So many people get connected that way. I found cousins I would never have known, and they've helped me and I've helped them. They've taken pictures of the graveyards where my people were. They took DNA tests that proved things that we never knew. It's remarkable, the things that we've learned from connecting with folks because I shared my tree. Share photos, make books. You can make posters. And when you go to reunions, share it. That's the best place. What I do for reunions, and people have hired me to do this, and it's awesome, is I make this humongous family tree. The biggest one was 30 feet it might have been for the Flack family reunion, but it might have been for the Lytle Foster Bergen West family reunion. It went all the way across the room, and I had pictures of each census that the family was in and almost all the cousins, because I had a coordinator, manning, because they weren't going to be sending my pictures to me. Who knows me? No, they sent them to their cousin, and then the cousin sent them to me. But we had everybody, and so here at the family reunion, everyone's up there finding themselves on this thing, and looking at their cousins and going, say, oh, I see how we're related. Oh, I see. Oh, and look at that. And they can really like get to understand how they are cousins. Like instead of just like, oh, that's my cousin, but I don't really know how. You know, like they can see that history, and it's like, it's awesome. I love doing that. Most family tree programs have a feature that can print you a chart. WikiTree, they're trying to make one family tree for everybody. And I might put my stuff in there. Oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that. But they do have a Black family history subset that is doing great work, making profiles of people who were enslaved by going through documents. And like, I have been researching like intensely for the last 15 years, up until this last year. This last year has been miserable for me. And this is the first time I've been out in public, like in front of people. But I lost my train of thought. I was just telling you about. Say again? Oh, the thing on WikiTree, yes. So I have been deep in the archives of whole communities that enslaved my family because there was so much trading amongst the folks, and there were so many allied families that are like connected that it ballooned. I mean, when I said my ancestors worked at the lead mines, there's records from colonial times, from 17-something, about paying, the Negroes working at the lead mines. And I know who inherited them, and I know who he gave them to, and I know who they gave their descendants to. And it all leads to my family. And I have records of every transfer all along the way of that white family because I've dug in, but I've got way more than my family. Every single will that I come across that's like kind of close to my family, or, in the case of Wilkes County, North Carolina, almost everybody. There's so many. I have this tree called African Americans of Wilkes, Surrey, and Watauga County, but it started out just being everybody with the last name Gwynn, my maiden name, and then it was like all my DNA cousins with the name of Gwynn. Then it was like every Black person with the name of Gwynn, and then all the people who were part of the enslaved families that the Gwynns enslaved, and all the Lenore descendants, and like when I said I went to that. Chapel Hill and got the plantation records, every time they mentioned an enslaved person, I recorded, what they said about it, that person. And if they recorded information about a family, they're in that tree and they're linked on a document. So like, what do I do with that stuff? I want to give it to WikiTree. I've got thousands of documents. I need to give it to them. There are websites you can just make. There's US Gen Web, which is another place to share. You can share things on Pinterest. You can create maps of where your people lived in Google Maps. You go to My Maps, and then you can drop pins. You can look at the census records of where your ancestor lived and put the address. And if it doesn't exist anymore, you can figure out where it was by using old maps and find out where to drop the pin. I have books that were written about all the enslavers along the New River in Wilkes County. I think that was Wilkes County. There's also another one for Wythe County where the people enslaved my folks, where they had a map of the river and all those enslavers with their names along and the dot where they lived. So I took that map and put it in Google Maps, and I can see how close the plantation was where this Thomas Jackson, who's my DNA ancestor, lived, and Edie Chafin, his enslaved person, was enslaved by Widow Chafin. She lived right by him. So, like, you just get to see the neighborhood, and these things are out there, and it's like, you can immerse yourself in that community. I pinned all the churches where my folks were buried, the homes where they lived, and the cemeteries and the churches they went to. That's like what's in my map, and where the enslaver houses were. So that's a great thing. And then you can share that with your family. Okay, and the end game. So this thing with this free text search that I just talked about, AI is going to really transform genealogy. That was just a taste. People have always talked about the fact that when you look at the amount of records that are out there about the historic records that may name folks, think of it as an iceberg. The things that are online are this, and there's all this. But people have been digitizing it for years. The archives have. There's a group called Free the Records who fights all the different states and counties who try to say, even though it's public information, and even though we might have made a deal with Family Search or Ancestry or somebody for them to scan this public information, and if they do that, they're supposed to make it accessible to the public at a certain point, but they don't. These folks sue them, and they always win. They usually win because it's the right, But, there's so many records out there that have never been scanned, like that have never been, indexed, and now AI is just going to do that, and we're going to see an explosion, and AI is going to scan a lot more stuff. Like, I'm not like a super fan of AI. I'm still a little wary. That's my medicine warning. But it is transformative, and it's going to really shake things up in many ways for our employment, but also for technology. But we are going to be able to solve a lot of family history mysteries because of this, because we already are. The things that I thought I would never knew, I'm learning every day because of DNA and technology. So that's the MVP websites, but I shared that. I told you about most of these things. What I said, Google, I put Negro girl in quotes. The reason I wrote that is that's the way the will was written, or Negro gal, or wench. It's ugly, but that's the word that you might need to put in the search to find your people. So I search in the county where my folks lived for the name of the name of the enslaver, the word will, and Negro girl, or Negroes, or slaves, like separately, boom, 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 do another search. Like, does it come up? Because that's how you might find a will. So that's that. Oh, so the tools or the Ancestry Free, guest account, research log, pedigree chart. Software programs, there's a lot. I use Reunion on a Mac. I've been using it since they had cards on a Mac, hypercards. That's like from 96. Oopsie. Have a habit of citing your sources. And you can, if you go to a family history center and you're stuck reading an actual old microfilm machine, you can take pictures of the screen and they look nice. that's great. You can just snap a picture and you don't have to pay for their horrible photocopy $1. So it's good to know. And this is what I did with my family history. I made a scrapbook. So these are pictures of what the heck is that? Oh, it might be a reflection of my great-great-grandfather, Tillman Greenleaf. And then this is his daughter, Aquila, on the right. And I actually got more pictures after I made this, so I had to make a little booklet in the frame because I had pictures of them throughout their marriage. This is James Gwynn and Aquila Greenleaf, my great-grandparents. And this is Aquila when she was older later. And then I wrote about them. They lived in Pittsburgh. Tillman was from Maryland, and he looks pretty white. This is Robert Honeybus. Well, his name used to be Robert Honeybus, and he turned into Reginald Stewart. And we had an oral history from my Aunt Pat, and she was like, the master said after slavery, you can choose Honeybus or you can choose Stewart, and our family chose Stewart. That was the story. I researched forever looking for these folks. Honeybus, but there were some honeybuses in Oklahoma, and we had ties to Oklahoma. And I put all those honeybuses in my family tree as separate people, just because. Eventually, I was like, this name just appeared out of nowhere. I was like, this is a bastardized name. And I figured out that it was Hannibas. But the way I found them was I did an ancestry search where I just typed HON asterisk. And then, boop, there it was. After 15 years of searching, Hanny Lou came up. They transcribed it badly, but that was the family, and that cracked it open for me. There were my people, and it wasn't true that they took the name right after slavery. In 1870, they still were using Honeybus. In 1880, they were still using Honeybus. But by 1900, the family scattered, and they all took different names. Well, a bunch of them took Stewart. Some of them kept Honeybus. The parents split up. Thomas Honeybus went up to Nebraska and married a white lady, and Martha moved down to live with her son in Oklahoma. There was a court case where his fourth wife was really, really mean to her and wouldn't take care of her. And I got to read about that. And there's just all this history about that. You never know what you're going to find, but it's amazing. And it gives you a connection to history. This is up here in the top left, Nanny. She raised my grandmother because my grandmother's mother died in childbirth. So that was her father's mother who raised her. And she had a bingo party at a Spick and Span tea room that she managed. And she did hair. She learned hair from the Poro system. And this is her membership card. She was quite a lady. She owned a lot of properties in Newark, New Jersey, and raised my aunt and took her out to Kansas, took her down to see her family. And then some sad truths that you may encounter. Everybody has secrets in their family. They need to be set free. We all may have some trauma, but we might not know what it is. But when you know what it is, you can try to address it and think about how your ancestors lived and think about how that impacted your life and work on kind of fixing things that might need to be healed. They don't need to be widely published. So you might find things that are pretty heinous. It's important that you, within your family, decide about, what's important that you all know. But you don't have to tell the whole world. But in order for healing to take place, sometimes that's, and DNA is exposing some things that were secret. People did not know. There are other families. There's incest, far more common than people knew. There's a lot. And it's just part of being a human being that you're going to have some sad truths in your family tree. And, oh, what a downer note. Shoot, I should have. And thank you for coming. Oh, I'm sorry I ended with that one. Oh, man.